Hello, Waffle lovers, and welcome to another episode of Whatever Flips Your Waffle here on 365sportscast.com. I'm your host, Mark Domeyer, coming to you, as always, from the bunker deep in the heart of southern Minnesota. There's so much to talk about with Minnesota sports this week. I can hardly wait to get going. I'm all a quiver in anticipation to start talking Twins, Vikings, Timberwolves, Wild, everything that's out there. I'm glad you've decided to tune in once again to listen to the ramblings I have about Minnesota sports. Welcome to those of you who are joining us for the very first time, and welcome back to those of you who are regulars on listening to the show. We got a big interview coming up here. Had a strange situation this week where I had somebody lined up to chat Vikings football. Unfortunately, he's out in North Dakota where they had a massive snowstorm, power knocked out for some time, and we were only able to connect a little bit after the fact, and I had to do a little emergency pinch hitting. So if you sit back, relax, prepare yourself for another helping of waffles, syrup optional, we're going to go right to our interview this week. I talked to Wyatt Groskreutz from the NRHEG school. He is my pinch hitter. He stepped in an emergency situation to help out, and we're excited to talk about the Vikings draft upcoming and the Twins, and we're going to get right to that right now. Joining us this week on Whatever Flips Your Waffle here at 365sportscast.com. I got a pinch hitter this week. I had somebody all lined up. We were going to talk Vikings. We were going to talk the draft, and then an emergency situation arose, and he wasn't able to join us, hopefully in the future. But stepping in at the last minute off the bench, Wyatt Groskreutz. He is a junior here at New Richland, Heartland, Allendale, Geneva. One of the favorite guys I ever coached in game baseball. Does a lot, and we're going to be here and talk about a lot when it comes to Minnesota sports. Wyatt, thanks for joining us this week.
Thanks for having me on. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's Wyatt comes down and visits me quite often. We chat sports, so nobody more natural than Wyatt to be here. Wyatt, we're going to start this. The Vikings are up. There's a lot to talk about in Minnesota sports. Let's focus in on the Vikings and the draft. April 28th to the 30th, Vikings draft number 12. Right off the bat, what's the biggest need that you think is going to get filled at the number 12 pick?
They could go two ways. I honestly see them, in my opinion, I think they go corner. I think a guy like Derek Stingley out of LSU or Ahmad Gardner, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, from Cincinnati. I think those two at corner would be amazing, but I could also see them going Tyler Linderbaum from Iowa at center. I think he'd be a huge upgrade over Bradbury at center.
Well, and that's interesting. I was just reading something recently about they have to make a decision at center with Bradbury. Is he the guy? You spent a number one, first round draft pick on him, but if there's somebody there, like you said, do you take that guy?
I hope they do. I think we've seen enough out of Bradbury. He's proven time and time again that he's just not the answer at center.
So because he's kind of undersized to play the position.
I think so. I mean, he is undersized for like a center because you watch him play and there are defensive tackles who forklift him off the line. They pick him up and they drive him back. He's good. It's just he's small. He's small for a center.
Well, and for those who don't know, Wyatt here, he plays offensive line, excellent offensive lineman for the local team. So he knows a lot more about that kind of stuff than I ever do, and I'll take his word for that. So quarterback does seem to be the big. Like Stingley is right there and everything. What happens if the draft doesn't go like people are talking? I've seen mock drafts where Stingley doesn't make it anywhere close to number 12, and the Vikings, the cornerbacks that are left are not ones you would take in the first round. I mean, in the possibility of center, but let me throw the idea of a defensive lineman, Jermaine Johnson from Florida State.
I think that'd be a great pick. I think edge would be huge for the Vikings because we don't know what this Danielle Hunter situation is going to be with his contract. I don't know how long his contract is, but I think if you can get a stud like him to come in and play defensive end for us, it covers you if Danielle Hunter does get traded or if he doesn't stay for long term.
Right, if he's just here for another year and then finds a way out. There's a lot. It's always, you can look at the draft and you can look at a lot of different draft scenarios and say, we can guess all we want. But I mean, outside of, Aiden Hutchinson might be a pretty safe number 1 draft pick for Jacksonville. And again, there's an edge rusher out of Michigan. But as we get closer, then people poke some holes into his game as well. And that's hard to even imagine.
I've seen so many mock drafts with different number 1 overall picks, whether it's Evan Neal out of Alabama at offensive tackle, or Hutchinson, or Kayvon Thibodeau out of Oregon. There's so many different number 1 overall picks that I think it's really a toss-up this year.
Well, in Jacksonville, probably, I shouldn't say it, but they probably can't go wrong.
No, there's a lot of people they could get that are very good.
Yeah.
I've heard rumors they might trade back, too. We don't know what they're going to do.
Well, and trading is an interesting situation because I even saw one mock draft where every team traded at least one time.
Yeah.
But I wonder, it's your ideas with the new GM in place, whose name I always mispronounce, Adolfo Mensa. Spielman was trade happy.
Mm-hmm. He traded back whenever he could to get more late round picks.
Right, but I don't. Have you seen any indication that with anything that they've said now that would indicate, hey, we're open for business, we're going to trade as much as we want to?
I haven't yet. I don't think so. I haven't heard anything if they're considering a trade or not.
It will be. It's just a different. You wonder if they're going to put their own mark on it. With O'Connell as the head coach now and Adolfo Mensa, hey, we're going to do things differently. I mean, obviously, if the right trade appears, you take it.
Definitely.
But again, areas of need, defense seems a priority this year, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, I think the first round pick, wherever you pick, if they trade or don't, has to be defense.
Right. Because if you look at the offense and you think about O'Connell and offensive mind coming in, you've got Kirk Cousins, you got Dalvin Cook, you got Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. Irv Smith Jr. comes back. People overlook that at tight end. They've got weapons.
Yeah.
And outside of like the offensive line need you talked about, you still have to tweak. But it doesn't seem like the offensive line is quite as urgent as it has been in the past.
No, I think they're doing a good job of trying to bring in depth pieces for it, because we've seen injuries happen the last couple of years up front, and I don't know every guy they've brought in, but so they brought in a guy from the Colts who backed up Quentin Nelson last year that I watched a little bit of him, and I thought he was really good.
Yeah. And
Colts fans I saw on Twitter were not happy when he left because he was a solid guard for them. So I think he's got a chance to compete for a job here. So I think they're doing good jobs of being smart with the limited cap space they have.
Well, you have to have that flexibility on the line, because if somebody goes down, you don't just have one person that is only going to play that position. They have to know multiple spots on the O-line, and that really makes a difference and an impact in the play calling you can do.
And I don't think the Vikings really have that guy. We really don't have the one offensive lineman who can play multiple positions. If you had to narrow it down to someone, it probably would be Oli Udoh, I would say, because he's moved around a little bit, but he's not that great, as we've seen.
Yeah. And that's got to be tough, different plays. Am I pulling on this play? Am I, whatever the case might be. And again, much more about that than I do, but it's so different on any given play if you're on the left side of the line, the right side of the line, and what you're doing, and trying to make sure you keep that all straight.
Yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head there, because as an offensive lineman, you have to really know that the biggest thing is the fronts, and you have to be able to determine which linebackers you think are going to be coming in blitzes, which gaps they're going to fill. And like you said, when you pull, you have to make sure you're blocking the right guy, because if you don't, it's going to throw everything off. That's why it's such a mental position as well as it is being physical, because the smarter you are up front, the more efficient you're going to be.
I heard when I was in school way back in the day, I heard a football coach one time say that every play, if everybody does their job perfectly, is designed to score a touchdown.
I don't think I can argue, because if all five offensive linemen on a run play block the guy they're supposed to and move them out of the way, and then they get to the second level and the running back makes someone miss, it's going to score.
Right. Yeah.
But if, let's say, a guy gets blown up at the offensive line and gets stuffed in the backfield, It only takes one person up front to screw up, and the whole play goes aside.
So 10 guys can do their job perfectly, and you could still lose the yardage on the play.
Yeah,
if it's the wrong guy who doesn't do his job. So, and that brings up again. Let's go back to these edge rushers: the Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, Trayvon Walker, all these guys. I mean, you could have the first 3 picks all be edge rushers. What does that say about how the NFL is evolving? That there's such a priority all of a sudden on these guys.
I think it's really saying that defenses are now starting to adapt to the pass heavy we see now. And I think if you can't defend the pass at like the secondary, I think teams are either going to say, well, we're going to rush, and we're going to rush like crazy, and we're going to get 100 sacks a year, or we're going to have outstanding secondary players, and our pass rush won't be that great.
And, some of the things show that some of these teams are not blitzing as much. They're just counting on their guys at the line to beat the man across from them one-on-one and put the pressure on the quarterback that way.
And I think, like I said, having elite pass rushers is what that does, because you can now afford to drop your linebackers into coverage to help your secondary. And if you can have, let's say, Aiden Hutchinson and these other elite pass rushers in the draft, if they come out and absolutely perform, it automatically makes the defense that much better, because you're not having to send so many linebackers to blitz. You can trust that your defensive line is going to get there.
And you can see, great quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, you have to have as many guys back in coverage as you can, because they're going to find any little opening.
Yeah, I think that's why a guy like Zadarius Smith is going to help the Vikings a lot, because now you have, if Danielle Hunter stays, Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith coming off the edge, which means Kendricks doesn't have to come as often. Barr, is he staying?
Who knows, yeah.
Barr can drop into coverage. Jordan Hicks is another one who I think can drop into coverage. We have options now if you have a better pass rush.
Right. And you bring up Zadarius Smith, and of course he'll have his eyes feasting on Aaron Rodgers when we play the Packers twice this year. But, you look at the playoffs last year, and here come the Cincinnati Bengals, and they make it to the Super Bowl in large part because they did exactly that against Mahomes and the Chiefs. They didn't blitz very much, but they just still put that pressure on and made him have to make plays, which he couldn't do in the second half.
That was the strength of that Cincinnati defense, the pass rush. Trey Hendrickson, and look, that team was terrible 2 years ago. I get it. A large part of it was Joe Burrow. But when you look at the defense and you think of one man in Cincinnati on defense, it's Trey Hendrickson.
And in retrospect, that wasn't a name that was talked about a lot when they signed him before last year. Now you look back and you say, that's one of the biggest signings of the offseason last year.
Easily. He improved them so much.
And so when you look at this offseason, there's probably somebody that we haven't really talked about much that's going to jump forward. We talk about Zadarius Smith, and a lot of people have their eyes on that. And the name eludes me of the linebacker that the Vikings signed from the Cardinals, Hicks.
Jordan Hicks.
Yeah, and another great signing. But you have to have those guys. You have to have that solid. And in my mind, I think you'll agree that the Vikings defense will be much improved. And we need that secondary. And even if you get a Stingley or whatever, he's not going to jump in there and be perfect right away.
No. I think the NFL at cornerback is a very hard transition. And that's why I think when you see teams draft corners high, they don't really translate as fast as you would a defensive lineman. And that's why I think edge rushers go higher, because the transition is a little bit easier. You just tell them to rush the quarterback.
Yeah.
You look at Derek Stingley. We're asking you to guard Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill. That's a transition. You don't see that in college football.
Yeah, there are great wide receivers in college, but also your chances of playing many of them are not there.
Yeah.
You're going to play some, but week in and week out, not every single week.
And that's the NFL. You do.
Yeah.
You got to get ready for that.
Stingley, the knock on him is the injury history.
Yeah, that scares me big time.
So it's do you take a chance? And of course, if he's hurt all the time, now you're going to hear about it. But if he's not,
If he can stay healthy, he is the best cornerback in this draft, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Him and Gardner are very close, but I give Stingley the edge just for talent because I think he's that good if he's healthy.
And why not have one more LSU guy here?
Exactly.
Right? I mean, it's old home day with LSU. Can it help a guy like that? I mean, it has to, doesn't it? If in practice every day you're going up against Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and KJ Osborne, who came on last year, that has to help your development as a secondary quarterback.
I think competition sharpens you no matter what you are. That's why I think if you were to bring in a rookie corner, I still don't think they'd come in and be an immediate impact. They might, who knows? But I think having Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen constantly maybe beat you for the first 3 weeks in practice, it's a big motivator. It's kind of like John Randall and Randall McDaniel. John Randall constantly went up against Randall McDaniel until he finally could beat Randall McDaniel, a Hall of Fame offensive guard, and John Randall turned into a Hall of Famer.
Right. We talk about possible trades. Here's a team I've heard rumblings about possibly. A Vikings trade with the Chargers. The Vikings move back in the first round.
I've heard that too.
And for the Chargers, it makes sense too because they need defense. They're kind of like the Vikings in that sense, where it feels like they're very close to being able to make a playoff run if they can solidify their defense. But now, if you're the Vikings, you better have a plan in place, right?
Yeah.
Because are you going to give up on a great talent and go back? I suppose maybe it depends on how the draft goes before then.
Yeah, if they do move back, I think it'd be to pick 18, 19 is where LA is about, and I don't really know what that does for the Vikings because you were not that good on defense last year, and if you move back, you are taking away the opportunity to draft game changers on defense possibly. And if it is Stingley like that, and he comes in and struggles for a little bit, but he'll obviously get better as he goes, and he's too good to not be good unless he's injured. And I just don't, in my opinion, I don't think trading back from 12 is going to benefit you much unless you have someone that is a guarantee hit that is going to fall.
Yeah. Or maybe you get another second-round draft pick with it too or something.
Maybe.
And if you're saying, there's some people there we think we're going to get. Here, I've seen a mock draft. ESPN has the Vikings in the second and third round. In the second round, they have them taking Trey McBride, the tight end from Colorado State. And in the third round, they have DeMarvin Leal, defensive tackle from Texas A&M. Do we need a tight end in the second round?
No.
I mean,
I don't think we do. We have Irv Smith and Chris Herndon.
Conklin's gone, and he filled in admirably last year.
Conklin was very good, but I think Chris Herndon is capable of playing that tight end too, and Irv Smith is your tight end one. You don't need a 3.
To me, if they draft a tight end that early, it's telling you Irv Smith isn't going to be quite ready, or they don't think he's going to be what he was.
Yeah, honest. That's the only way I see them doing it is if Irv Smith will not play week 1.
Right. Yeah, it's a weird thing when I saw that. I thought, well, I'm going to ask about this. Somebody else, what we think about that. The off season has kind of dictated how this is going to play out, right? I mean, like Patrick Peterson is back. That helps us. He didn't probably have as good a season last year as he'd hoped to in the secondary, but he's got leadership and he's got some talent. If he's not back, it probably really changes things around.
I think he was a huge signing because he wasn't terrible last year, but he also was not someone who's going to be that shutdown corner. He's there solely for the purpose to maintain stability and help development with guys like Cameron Dantzler, and let's say they draft a Stingley. And it would have helped the one guy, what's the cornerback who got arrested before the season?
Gladney.
He was also there to help Gladney, but unfortunately he got arrested.
Right. And since was acquitted, I mean, they dropped all the charges and stuff. But, and Patrick Peterson, here's a guy who's looking for a ring. So he probably doesn't come back to the Vikings if he doesn't think there's a chance.
Yeah. I think that was a big – I thought that too. If he is willing to come back here, because he never has had a chance at a winning season, but maybe once or twice with the Cardinals, I think he sees a vision here of success. And I think O'Connell brought that too, or maybe just getting rid of Zimmer, because I think a lot of these players were not happy with what Zimmer was doing.
Right. We've talked about, defense in the secondary, a little bit of O-line help too. Any other holes that need to be addressed in this draft, whether it's we need them this year or, hey, this guy is going to be out the door and we need to replace them?
I would have to say probably either safety or linebacker. I like Cameron Bynum a lot, but he hasn't. I think if you were to just bring in like a guy in the 3rd or 4th round, maybe as a depth piece in case Bynum is not the greatest. And linebacker, you also need a 4th guy because right now it's Hicks, Kendricks, and Barr, and they've said they're going to switch to a 3-4.
Right.
So I think maybe a 3rd round guy, unless they think Chaz Surratt from last year's draft is going to be good, but I think linebacker is one of the biggest things with maybe safety.
How big a difference does this change to a new defense make? Again, you understand that sort of stuff a little bit better than I do, but so you're 3 down linemen.
It allows you to I really don't know it that well, but it allows you to have more off the edge stuff with you. I think with your pass rushers, because now you can do a nose tackle and 2 defensive tackles and have Smith and Hunter come off the edge. But what usually happens is one of those defensive ends will drop into coverage, and Zadarius Smith has experience doing that.
Right.
It will really depend on how well Hunter does it, and I think he's capable of doing it because he's an athlete. So usually what it is it gives you an extra coverage guy because Zadarius Smith and Neil Hunter can go out.
Well, one of the things I've heard, if Barr is still here, and again, that's kind of murky, is that he would get more opportunities to rush quarterback in this type of a defense. And that's where he's probably best.
He might. I would think he would, because if you wanted to do like a rotation of him and Hunter, because let's say you want Hunter to solely rush, you could use Barr and Smith as a rotation for that other pass rusher because they both have coverage experience.
Right. Well, I don't know how it all works. I sometimes worry a little bit about without 4 guys up at the line, when teams have good running games, are we going to be reacting and allowing, not as many, like, stuff them at the line of scrimmage kind of thing? Although maybe when you're back there, if you're reading that well as a linebacker, you're able to see that coming and hit the line a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that too, because Jordan Hicks is a great tackler. I think he had a lot of tackles last year, and I think for linebackers, having the 3-4 will be good because I don't know if they blitz more or not, but I think it gives them like more opportunity to make tackles and stuff the line because they're reading run, obviously, and helping make plays at the line of scrimmage.
Right. Are there any quarterback solutions in this draft? There's some quarterbacks out there, Pickett, somebody's like, we're not going to get Pickett. I don't think we're going to draft Pickett. Or is this just going to be we're going to have Kirk Cousins till he retires?
I think we have Kirk Cousins this year. I don't think we draft anyone because the only ones I've watched a little bit of highlights is Pickett and Malik Willis. Pickett he's good, but I don't think he's anything special. Malik Willis looks really good, but we're nowhere near to pick him.
Right. To me, if the Vikings take a quarterback in the first 3-4 rounds this year, that's telling you Kellen Mond is not the guy. And maybe O'Connell and his staff want a year of themselves trying to develop Kellen Mond. Sean Mannion's never going to be a long-term solution. He can hardly be a backup quarterback. But I just think you re-sign Cousins, and he said he wants to stay here. I think Kirk Cousins is here until he retires, but my worry too is how that impacts the salary cap every single year.
Yeah, they keep kicking the can down the road with his contract, really, because I don't like this extension they just did with this 1-year deal. I don't think that was smart, in my opinion, because you're just adding 1 more year. I know you're moving salary around. I don't fully understand how it all works, but I know they're lessening the cap hit this year. But if you think about it, it's really just a 1-year extension for $40 million, and you're going to have to pay him a lot next year. And now it's saying that with Kirk, we think he can win with a new coaching system and a coach who believes in him. And I hope that's the case, but he's shown a lot in big-time moments that he kind of collapses. But there's also been big-time games such as the Saints game when he's shined. So, I mean, maybe O'Connell will bring out the best in him.
Right. And, the salary cap is supposed to jump pretty tremendously after this year because coming out of COVID and stuff and the amount of money they make and that however that all equates. And they say, well, we'll be fine then. Okay, but every other team is getting that jump too. And if you're spending that, it's like the Packers spending that percentage on Aaron Rodgers. Are you going to have enough pieces around him? That's where I think this draft is really crucial because you have to have some cheap pieces that slot in off that rookie salary cap in order to make this work.
Yeah, and that's why I think the Vikings and Kwesi, Adolfo-Mensah, O'Connell, this whole front office, in my opinion, I really think they are thinking they can win it all this year because they're kicking the can down the road again with this money. They brought in a couple veterans who they think will help win now, and their eye is not set on 2023, 2024. It's set on the Super Bowl this year. And in my opinion, I think they're not good enough to do it yet. The defense is shaky. The offensive line is shaky. I trust the offense. I trust Kirk. I trust Jefferson and Thielen to make plays. But like I said, Kirk sometimes shuts down in big games. The defense was awful last year.
Yeah. Yes.
It's just a lot has to go right for them to be very, very good.
Who's the best team in the NFC right now, pre-draft?
Without a doubt, it's the Buccaneers.
Okay, just because Brady comes back.
Without Brady, it's a toss-up. I really don't know who it would be, but it's the Bucs because the Packers lost Adams. Tom Brady, I think wherever Brady is, they're obviously one of the best teams in the NFL. But the NFC is not that great to begin with, and I think it's the Bucs.
Okay, all right. It's because nobody else has really proven themselves. The Packers fold in a big game, year in and year out. We know what the Vikings do too, but they don't make it quite to the big enough game to fold. Arizona has wilted halfway through the season the last couple of years, despite their talent. San Francisco is there, but who's their quarterback this year? And Deebo Samuel wants out.
Yeah, I think that shocked me. I did not expect him to want out of San Francisco.
Unless he's got some situation in mind, but he was the guy the second half of last year.
Yeah.
And they got their offense around him, and I just think, holy cow.
He was the 49ers in the second half of the season.
He basically tried to single-handedly beat the Vikings.
Well, I guess I forgot about the Rams, too. So.
No, there's the Rams just because they won the Super Bowl last year.
I forgot about the Rams.
It seems like they're due for coming back down to earth. People will game plan for them better.
Yeah, I think they are very, very strong, and I think they're going to make a run again. But I think it's hard to get past Tampa Bay just because Tom Brady. Brady, and I know they beat him this year, I know, but I think they are going to take a step back. They're paying Stafford a lot of money now. They are bringing in, and I think they got better too on defense with Bobby Wagner. But I don't know. I think the Bucs are just better.
It's hard to repeat. Yeah. It just is. If you were to grade the Vikings on the off season so far, what grade would you give them?
B-. I don't think it was great, but I don't think it was bad.
With a good draft, how high can that grade go?
Easily up to a B+ to an A. If they hit on a lot of their draft picks and these free agent flyers, like some of these offensive linemen, and Zadarius Smith is healthy, they're easily a really, really good team. But like I said, a lot of that has to go perfectly because it means you're hitting on all your draft picks, which rarely happens. The offensive line's got to play very well, and Zadarius Smith's got to stay healthy coming off back surgery.
Right. And we can't ever come up with a final grade for at least a year, right? We don't. Next year we could be sitting here saying, well, this guy hit and this guy didn't, and oh my, this guy was terrible, or this guy's got a real chance to be an all-pro and whatever. So
there's a very strong chance I am completely wrong. They could either be really good and they could be awful too. We don't know what
they could go and win 13 games this year.
Yeah, and I would have not seen it coming.
And at the same time, they could go and win 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, that's how I see this team. They are boom or bust. I don't really know how it's going to go.
I did read something that said the Packers won't have any difficulty with the Vikings, Lions, or Bears. I thought, well...
The Vikings always play them tough, at home at least.
The Bears and Lions they're not
jokes.
good.
They are jokes.
The Lions are getting better, I think, but They have a good coaching staff.
The Lions have been. I like Dan Campbell. They're just a joke of a franchise the last 20 years.
Yeah.
The Bears are turning into a rebuild. I like Matt Eberflus, their new head coach, but I don't think they're going to put any fight up to the Packers.
Yeah, and Justin Fields, the jury's out yet. He kind of got thrown in the fire last year. And
he had his moments, but we have to see yet.
Yeah. We're here with Wyatt Groskreutz. He is pinch hitting today for a guest who was supposed to join me and couldn't because of an emergency. And so we've been talking Vikings football, NFL draft coming up this weekend. We're going to turn now and talk Twins baseball because holy cow, if Wyatt, if you and I sat here a week ago talking Twins baseball, it would have been, here we go again.
I walked into your room on Thursday morning and I asked, is it too early to say the season's over?
Yep.
4-8 coming off a series loss to the Royals. I can tell you right now, I had very low expectations heading into that White Sox series, and boy, did they ever exceed them. That was so much fun to watch. That was a really, really good series, and it showed they are able to beat teams, and they need to keep this up.
And if you're in Chicago right now, Chicago is going to run away with this division.
7 in a row. They've lost 7 in a row now.
Yeah. And Tony La Russa has to be under the microscope. Is he just too outdated to keep managing?
Yeah. I mean
he's a Hall of Fame manager.
He's a very good manager, but I don't think he's right for this era of baseball because he makes some questionable decisions. I don't like how... And I love the Twins that they won the game. They walked off the White Sox and Hendricks. But the fact that you could see Hendricks pulling at his hamstring, it looked like he was hurt, and you left him in. You didn't go out there to check on him. You just left him in. It's like, no, and Buxton's coming up. You have to know that's dangerous. He already homered. And he thought to himself, let's leave him out there and see if he's okay to pitch.
It's different if you're in a summer league, a junior high baseball game. You say, we're going to pitch to their best batter who could win the game for them because you see what you can do. Byron Buxton, Rocco Baldelli said he might be the best baseball player in the world right now.
I think it's an accurate statement.
Hard to argue with that, isn't it?
He is a difference maker.
When he came out and when he was drafted, I remember reading about 5-tool player. Like, here is the ultimate 5-tool player. He's got it all, and he's been showing that lately. I think if he had been healthy this whole month, and you still might talk about him as AL Player of the Month.
Yeah.
Possibly.
I think he's going to run away with it if he keeps playing like this.
And he's got incentive and motivation to do this. His contract, he gets paid more for getting votes for being the MVP.
And all he has to do is play 140 games, and he's going to get a lot of votes for the MVP.
Yes, yeah. I put him in the 125 to 130 range, and he's right there.
Oh, yeah.
And you play like this, how can you pitch to him with the base open?
I don't know. He's so good. His plate approach it's incredible. Watching him play the game of baseball is awesome. I've never seen anyone like this ever.
When he first came up, I remember watching his very first game, and I think it was against the Texas Rangers, and he looked clueless at the plate. Like he didn't have any idea of what to do up there. He got on base. I could be wrong on this, but I think he got on base in his first game ever on a drop third strike, and he hustled down and made it, kind of a thing. And that speed, you can't teach speed.
No.
He just has this gift and ability, and the way he tracks things down in the outfield, it just makes it seem like a smaller ballpark.
He is the ultimate, like you said, 5-tool player. I read this the other day. I don't know who the general manager was at the time when they drafted him, but because, like you said, he was clueless at the plate for his first 4 or 5 years. And they asked him one time, they said, what do you think of his hitting, and why do you think he's struggling, and how long do you have to judge him for this? And he said, we don't judge a major league player's ability to hit until they're about 4 years down the line, and when he gets 2,500 plate appearances. And I don't remember who the general manager was.
Terry Ryan.
What's crazy about this is 4 or 5 years later, 2,500 bats, he's turning into the MVP of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, he's just fantastic. You just hope he can, again, as we say always, stay healthy.
Yeah.
Be part of this team. And if Correa can come around, and you just assume that he will, You have the number 1 and number 2 draft picks from that year playing with each other at a high level on a baseball diamond.
Correa is too good to not turn it around.
Yeah.
And his defense is making an impact already. So.
It is. He makes plays. Here's another guy, Jeffers, who doesn't have a great batting average, although it's getting better these last couple of games. But when you watch him catch, he's making a difference for these starting pitchers because he's framing pitches. With the bases loaded on Friday night against the White Sox and a 3-2 count, he put the ball was in a spot coming off of Paddock's arm. That was pretty close.
Yeah.
And Jeffers put it just enough tweak with the glove to sell it.
I watched him throw that pitch, and I thought he was going to say ball 4, but Jeffers framed it.
Yeah.
And he's been a very good defensive catcher.
And to me, that's it. And, Sanchez is a little banged up now. Jeffers didn't play the series finale against the White Sox because he was feeling it a little bit in his knee. But to me, he's one of those understated people we don't talk about. And what he does for the starting staff, because right now, and it's not going to end that way, but this might be the best starting pitching staff in the American League.
It's up there, definitely up there. I mean, I would have to argue Toronto is maybe better, and I would say probably Cleveland's is pretty good too.
Well, there's
but
teams
Minnesota,
on paper that should be.
But you look at Toronto, Barrios has not been that great so far. Minnesota, they have been one of the best. They probably are right now the best starting rotation in the American League.
Yeah, and again, I think they're going to come back to earth. They can't keep this up. Not all 5 can keep it up all year.
Definitely, I think Dylan Bundy is a good starting pitcher, but he is not what he is pitching right. He is pitching out of his mind.
Yeah, and teams will start to figure, and even you look and see, like when he played pitched against the Red Sox, 3rd time through the batting order.
They started to figure
the timing is there, as it is always. And I'm coming around more and more to Baldelli's analytics on that area. I wish these pitchers could go 7-8 innings sometimes. But the reality of the major leagues today are teams are so good, they figure it out, and you got to bring in a fresh arm, a new look.
Mm-hmm. I'm so on the analytics because I think it was the last game of the Royals series when they lost 2-1. Joe Ryan was flying through 6 innings, and he only thrown about 82, 83 pitches. I might be wrong, but I don't get how you don't send him back out for the 7th when I know it's the 3rd time through the order, but he's proven he's gotten everyone out. And Joe Ryan is easily the best starter on that staff right now, and he's got a very good command of his fastball. I think if I was the manager in that situation, I send him back out for the 7th. Some of his decisions I don't fully understand, like pinch hitting Garlick for Gordon in certain situations. Right. I don't like. Or even yesterday when he didn't pinch hit Correa for Celestino.
Well, it's his day off.
Oh, it was his day. Oh.
But even there, this is a big situation. Don't you bring your highest paid player off the bench for one at bat?
I didn't know it was his day off, so that's.
I misspoke earlier when I said Paddock threw the pitch. I was thinking of Emilio Pagan, who seems to be the closer. How many heart attacks is this guy going to give Twins fans this year if he's
I don't
the
know
closer?
I don't know what to think about Pagan. He's got very good stuff, but he's just, his command scares me.
Which is weird because I was watching the finish of the Kansas City series, and they said something like he averages 1 walk every 3 or 4 innings. And all of a sudden he's walking guys left and right. Like, wait, what?
Yeah.
But what are your other options? You can't bring Tyler Duffy out there.
No.
He lost the game almost single-handedly to the Royals. Joanne Duran, maybe?
I think he's got the potential. At some point in the year, Rocco's going to say, let's move him to the 9th. Because his fastball is untouchable.
Yeah. And then he breaks off that slider, and you say, okay, yeah, good luck with that.
That splinker, too.
Yeah.
I love that pitch.
It's just crazy. The defense we talked about a little bit too. Like I look at a guy like Gio Urshela, and his defense has done some things out there. They have a very solid infield, and even like moving Arise to first at times, he'll do the job probably. And you can't take Arise's bat out of the lineup.
He looked good at first base. I thought I mean,
and you're a first baseman.
Yeah, I thought he played very good at first. He made that diving play. He wasn't bad.
Yeah.
If you could take Sano's bat out of the lineup right now and put his in, I would do it.
I don't know what you do with Sano, and you don't really have a lot of other options until Kirilloff gets healthy.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard, but then again, Sano might go on a tear at any moment here and just start cranking the ball out of the ballpark for about a week, and then
he'll be back
to the way he was.
I really think when Kirilloff is healthy, I think he's this team's starting first baseman. With Arias, he's going to be in the lineup somewhere. He's going to find a place to play because his bat's too good.
Yeah. So they've got Detroit, Tampa Bay coming up, and then Baltimore, I think you said. And again, you take it in chunks of 10. Every 10 games, how are we doing? Can we win 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10? And if you do that, then you're in the playoffs.
You're in a very good spot. And I think, like you said, this next 10, they easily can win 7 out of 10. I think if you take 2 out of 3 in Detroit, Tampa Bay is a good team. It's going to be a struggle, but you can take 2 out of 3 in Tampa Bay. If you want to win the division, you take 2 out of 3.
Right.
And then Baltimore, 3 out of 4 or 4.
Right. Yeah, hopefully. So good things on the horizon. We'll see. We'll have to do some flipping around this weekend, watching the draft. At least hey, the Vikings are up here, and then go back over, watch some baseball, watch some basketball, watch some hockey. There's all kinds of great sports month here in Minnesota. Wyatt, thanks for joining us, stepping up this week, and joining the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Once again, folks, normally I'd love to have a commercial here, support a sponsor for the program, and I don't have one. And, it does cost just a little bit to run this program and keep things going. And I'd sure appreciate if you would consider possibly sponsoring an episode of Whatever Flips Your Waffle. It's only $25 for a spot. And we can talk about things and how to figure that out. Just email me, waffleflipper22@gmail.com, or message me on Twitter at MrD1973. Well, it was great of Wyatt to step in and help. He's a fantastic young man and was willing and ready to help out at a moment's notice to interview. And the funny part of this is after Wyatt and I got done, and there were a number of other things going on, and then I got a call from the gentleman that I had hoped to have on, Troy Ramage. He runs a Vikings account on Twitter, very knowledgeable when it comes to the Vikings. And he's without power out there in North Dakota and everything else, managed to get his phone charged again, called to let me know things were on the upswing, and he's going to be at the Vikings draft this coming week. And we arranged, hopefully, we can get him on for next week's program, and we will dissect the draft that way. But a fantastic gentleman, touching base, and so glad things are going well with him. We'll keep our fingers crossed. And as he and I chatted just a little bit, some of the things that Wyatt and I had talked about when it comes to the draft, and that Troy actually, he's thinking that like Stingley and so on will be gone. The good cornerbacks are going to be gone, and he's thinking Jermaine Johnson could be somebody there. He actually thinks the Vikings might even be looking at wide receiver. And we had a really good discussion about how the new front office might be looking at drafts, very different from the past, more of that Moneyball approach that we hear of in baseball. And as we talked about that, of course, my mind went to thinking, well, okay, if we're going to talk next week, let's kind of look at how that all worked, and maybe he'll be able to kind of give a little more information on that. So certainly he thinks a different look at this. Defense will be valued, but at the same time, if your best defensive players are gone and you're thinking, can we hold on to Justin Jefferson? Adam Thielen's kind of waning in his career. Do we need to draft another young person that will be able to afford whether Jefferson is affordable or not? So there's a lot to it, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the draft this coming week. I have no idea, and like Troy told me too, he says, we don't really know. We've never seen this general manager draft before, and it's exciting to encounter something new. And like I said, hopefully Troy will be able to join us for next week's program, and we can talk about all that, and he gets some power back on out there in North Dakota. Not a good thing, that's for sure, but he was doing fine. So again, great thanks to Wyatt Groskreutz for stepping in, and we'll hope to have him on again in the future. Now it's time for the state of Minnesota sports. Certainly the Vikings are forefront in our minds, and not much more we can talk about once until the draft is done. The Twins, too, as Wyatt alluded to, certainly he and I were kind of on a sad path there, a little afraid of what might happen with the Twins, but we've decided, as we said, we'll take it about every 10 games at a time and really look at where we are as a team and kind of judge things on there, so we can't overreact to any one game. This is not the NFL. It's not NCAA football. There's a long season ahead, and as you are listening to this, the Twins are in the second game of their 3-game series against the Detroit Tigers at Target Field. And we said Detroit's an improved team, but again, take 2 out of 3. Win the series. That's kind of got to be the mantra. Go down to Tampa Bay. Show that you're a quality team. Win on the road down in Tampa, a strange, quirky stadium. Weird things happen when you're down there. And then go to Baltimore and show a team that's not very good that they're not very good. And that's what a good team will do. And again, hopefully the pitching stays on track and does what it can. But boy, it sure is exciting when you can see and I've talked about not being able to watch. I found some different ways to maybe be able to watch the Twins at times, but listening on the radio on Sunday when they had the 10-inning victory over the White Sox, I was on my way back from Winona from visiting our daughter out there at college, a concert that she had. And if you know where Winona, Minnesota is, you're coming up out of the valley and through the bluffs and everything else there, and the radio is not always coming in quite clearly. And I heard the White Sox take the lead. I heard, actually back in the 9th, I heard the Twins have a chance to win it and couldn't come through. Here, the White Sox take the lead in the 10th, and it's kind of fading in and out. And it came right back into clear form just as Buxton came to the plate, hit the mammoth home run with a huge walk-off, 469 feet. That's a walk-off home run. And fantastic. And my wife and my mother and my mother-in-law were in the car, and I'm not sure that they quite understood my elation. It was exciting, and it's fun when your team plays good baseball, and the Twins are doing that, and hopefully that will continue. Again, revolves around the pitching. That hitting's got to come around, and really when you dissect Major League Baseball right now, the hitters are behind. It is like woefully low batting averages across the league. So it's not just the Twins that are having those problems. It just seems exacerbated when it's your home team and they're not coming up with the big hits at the big times. But like Wyatt and I said too, imagine being down in Chicago. You're supposed to win this division, and you get swept on the road against the Twins team that is snapping at your heels. And so I can imagine Tony La Russa is under a little bit of fire down there. Your Timberwolves. As this is being recorded, we're talking about Game 5 happening in Memphis. The Wolves, after blowing such a huge lead twice in Game 3 with a chance to take control of the series, you had to wonder, how are they going to come back from that? I wondered too. I thought, oh my goodness, that just psychologically drained so much out of you. But they responded with the big Game 4 win at Target Center, win by a point, although it was the last second 3 that pulled it within a point. Karl Anthony Towns came out, showed some maturity, had a game, showed why free throws are so very, very important down the stretch. And now it's an even series again. Again, as you're listening to this for the first time, one of the two teams has taken a 3-2 lead. We've got to record a little bit early. But regardless, we know that in the week here ahead of us, we have at least one Timberwolves game and maybe 2 to finish off this series against Memphis. They'll play Friday night in Minnesota. One team will have a chance to clinch the series, and if it goes to Game 7, that will be Sunday in Memphis. And how exciting that is, again, to be able to do that. If the Timberwolves lose this series, the season is not a failure. You double your win total from a year before. You go against the number 2 seed, and you're making it a real series, even if it's only 6 games. If they happen to lose Game 5 and Game 6, they made a battle. They know they had a chance to win it. It's not quite like the Brooklyn Nets over in the Eastern Conference, who everybody thought, that they should have a chance to even advance and move along, and the Celtics have really taken that to them. But the Timberwolves have had a successful season, and we're excited about that, and excited about the future. And again, hopefully next week when we're here on the program, we're talking about round 2 and the Timberwolves continuing on their playoff journey. The Wild are finishing up their season, and they've got a game as we're recording this and finishing things up on Tuesday night, and then they have back-to-back games Thursday and Friday. And this is a control your destiny kind of a thing. You win those all 3 games, and you are hosting home ice playoffs against the St. Louis Blues. And you look again, as we've talked about, the last 2 games of the season against Calgary and Colorado, the 2 division leaders in the Western Conference, but neither of them really have anything to play for. I think they've kind of solidified where they are in the standings. Nobody's nipping at their heels or anything like that. So who knows what they'll do. The Wild will certainly be out to play, but the St. Louis Blues also play Colorado here at the end of the season. A lot to be determined, but again, if the Wild do stumble and lose that home ice, they'll have nobody to blame but themselves and the St. Louis Blues, who they can't seem to beat, and not your ideal first-round matchup. But at the same time, if you think you're a good team, you're going to have to beat that team eventually, law of averages, and maybe you can turn things around and start your own streak when you play them in the playoffs. It will remain to be seen, but it's an exciting April as we wrap up the month here, and hopefully we've got just as exciting a May ahead of us. And that is the state of Minnesota sports. And now it's time for This Week in Minnesota Sports History. There are a number of no-hitters to talk about this week. We'll start on April 27th. In 1969, Harmon Killebrew clouded his 400th career home run in a Twins win over the White Sox 4-3. And in 1994, on April 27th, Scott Erickson of the Twins no-hit the Brewers of Milwaukee in a 6-0 win. And folks, I was there, one of 17,998 fans in attendance that night. I went up with a group from Winona State when I was at college there. Erickson threw 129 pitches. Think about that. In 2022, would a manager leave his pitcher out there that long? Who knows? We know about Clayton Kershaw a couple weeks ago, 7 perfect innings, and then got pulled. Who knows? I have to tell you, it was about the 6th inning, I think, and we were nearby some inebriated Brewers fans who suddenly realized their team had yet to get a hit. It was one of those magical games. You have no idea something like that's going to happen. Just pure luck that I happened to be there for that game, but what a great win for the Twins. Here's an amazing stat. The previous season, Scott Erickson had led the majors in hits allowed. On April 28th, in 1987, the NBA awarded an expansion franchise to Minnesota to begin play in 1989. Of course, that would become our Minnesota Timberwolves. The Orlando Magic also entered the league in 1989. In 1988, on April 28th, the Baltimore Orioles lost 4-2 to the Twins at the Metrodome for their record 21st consecutive loss. They finally won the next day, beating the White Sox. On April 29th, in 1999, the Minnesota Supreme Court ruled that the ability to relocate a baseball franchise was within the rights of owners and did not violate the antitrust exemption. This was important because, of course, the rumors were going around about the Twins possibly being relocated to North Carolina or other locations. Of course, the idea of contraction came in a couple years after that, and ultimately the Twins stayed. Of course, we're very happy for that, and play at the beautiful Target Field. On April 30th, in 1939, not a Minnesota-related thing, but important indeed, Lou Gehrig played in his final game for the New York Yankees, 2,130 in a row, a record that many thought would never be broken until Cal Ripken Jr. did it, and I would say that that is one of the more safe records now in Major League Baseball. In 1969, in a 6-4 win over the Seattle Pilots, the Twins pulled off a triple steal, if you can imagine that. Rod Carew stole home, Tony Oliva third, and Harmon Killebrew second, all on the same play. On May 1st, in 1996, the Twins have a first as a franchise by winning a game on a hit-by-pitch in a 6-5 victory when Paul Molitor was plunked by the Kansas City Royals with the bases loaded. On May 2nd, in 1963, the Twins traded pitcher Jack Kralik to Cleveland for pitcher Jim Perry. A good trade for the Twins. Perry would go on to win the Cy Young in 1970. In 1964, the Twins hit 4 consecutive home runs, a rarity in the sport, and they waited till the 11th inning to do it in a 7-3 victory in Kansas City. Oliva, Hall, Allison, and Killebrew were the 4 consecutive home runs. On May 2nd in 2001, not a great memory, but a memory nonetheless, Chuck Knobloch and the New York Yankees were visiting the Metrodome. Knobloch, of course, a former Twin. Let's just say the fans were not kind to Chuck Knobloch that night. He was pelted by objects. It was dollar a dog night, so a lot of hot dogs were thrown at him, coins, batteries, other things. Manager Tom Kelly to the rescue. I remember watching that game. He got on the PA system and scolded the fans, said, "This is an important game. Knock it off." The umps were ready to call the game and award it to the Yankees. Fans stopped, and the Twins went on to win 4-2. On May 2nd, in 2012, Jared Weaver of the Angels no-hit the Twins in a 9-0 win in Anaheim. 2 Twins reached base that game, one on a walk and one on a dropped third strike advancement. One more no-hit thing in 2011 on May 3rd. Francisco Liriano threw a no-hitter for the Twins, the 5th pitcher to do so, in a 1-0 win in Chicago versus the White Sox. He threw 123 pitches that night, and the only run was provided by a Jason Kubel home run. On May 3rd in 2021, just last year, Byron Buxton was named AL Player of the Month for the Twins. Big things were expected, and of course, he went through a lot of injuries after that, and hopefully is regaining that form here for the Twins this year. For our local listeners, this week in New Richland, Heartland, Ellendale, Geneva sports, always subject to the whims of Mother Nature. On April 28th, baseball is at Hayfield, softball is home against Hayfield, and golf will be swinging the clubs up in Janesville. On April 29th, the track team runs at Blue Earth. And on April 30th, not a sporting event, but it is time for the prom here in the NRHEG area. Hopefully all our students have a good time and stay safe. Another non-sporting event, but important indeed, May 2nd, is the Pops concert for both our choir and band in New Richland. And we can hope that the weather won't affect that. May 3rd, golf is at Hayfield. Softball is home against Waterville Elysian Morristown. And baseball is at Blue Earth. That could all change by the time you hear this, because the way the weather's been going, it's a constant day-by-day change. Well, that's going to do it for another helping of waffles here at 365sportscast.com. I'm glad you joined us for this hour. Hope you'll continue to tune in each week right here at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central on Wednesdays. If you can't catch the original broadcast, jot it down. Each week's episode replays Thursday at 10 o'clock, Friday at 7 o'clock, Saturday at 10 o'clock, Monday at 8 o'clock, and Tuesday at 10 o'clock, all Eastern Standard Time. All the shows also archive to YouTube. Search up Whatever Flips Your Waffle. You can go and view and listen to any of the previous episodes. Remember, if you have thoughts, if you want some feedback, you think that maybe I should interview you on the show, email me, waffleflipper22@gmail.com, or message me on Twitter at Mr. D1973. Next week, we'll dive back into the world of Minnesota sports. We'll dissect the Minnesota Vikings draft. We'll see where the Twins are. We'll see if we're still talking about the Timberwolves or not. And the Wild are honing in on their own playoffs. I'll have another special guest to delve into all this and more. Thanks again for joining me. This is Mark Domeyer, signing off with Syrup.